Chapter 3. The mystery behind why Pat loved the Backstreet Boys so much could be solved by studying the collective habit of humans to stop consuming new music once they reach a certain point in life. The point is different for everyone, but it seems like there's a universal drive as one ages to continue listening to the same comfortable songs that reminded them of better times in the past. For Pat, those better times were when she first discovered the internet and had easy access to music via the World Wide Web. Britney Spears, NSYNC, Christina Aguilera, and Backstreet Boys invaded Pat's first personal computer and shaped her musical taste, molding it beyond repair to crave the tunes that most small-town Texans actively despised. The more interesting mystery surrounding Pat and KOBO is how she was able to work there full-time. The radio broadcast industry had long been on the slide downward and into obscurity. The days of Stern and Bubba building a dedicated following that raking in millions from advertisers were long gone. Radio ad sales had been in decline for decades. If you looked at it on paper, KOBO was actually bucking that trend. They saw zero decline in their advertising deals. That's because KOBO had never, in the history of the radio station, gotten a single advertiser. The station never solicited donations from local businesses or listeners. Pat herself had not grown up rich or brought a bunch of money into the equation. Now, she somehow was able to spend 8 hours a day, 7 days per week, broadcasting live from downtown St. Farr. Money was coming in somehow. It's not like Pat was living out at the station or in the street starving, but no one was really clear on where that money came from or how it got to Pat's account at St. Farr Credit Union. What others in town didn't know is that Pat was actually living comfortably due to anonymous donations she received in the mail each month. The envelopes with no return address began showing up a few months after she began broadcasting. Each envelope contained only a check, no note. At first, Pat was nervous about cashing the checks. Sure, she appreciated receiving money, and they were written out to KOBO, but it still felt shady. After working hard for her money for her entire life, it was strange to receive payments anonymously on a regular basis. Although the money is the more fascinating puzzle concerning Pat, the folks in St. Farr hardly gave it any thought. The die-hard love of Backstreet Boys, on the other hand, that is something the entire town was concerned with. KOBO was both the first radio station in the area and the only radio station that radios in St. Farr could reliably pick up. As a result, many people in the isolated town heard bits and pieces of the KOBO broadcast on a daily basis. The gas station, the general store, the bank, the cafe, most of the small town businesses left the broadcast running throughout the day and night so that they didn't have to live in the silence of St. Farr. The entire town was familiar with the program. Pat had been running the same routine for a few decades after all. Every day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Pat would sit in front of the switchboard and microphone inside the studio and recap national news stories, stories from around town, announcements about the St. Farr School Bake Sale or car wash fundraisers, reminders about the upcoming town barbecue events, personal stories, and of course, she would spin late 90s and early 2000s pop records in between each segment. Every evening at precisely 5 p.m., Pat would sign off and start the playlist. The playlist was a familiar companion that scored the life of every citizen in St. Farr. Pat was so proud of the list of tracks that filled the playlist that she never made any changes. From beginning to end, the playlist was exactly 16 hours long and featured every one of Pat's favorite songs. Because she would start the playlist at exactly 5 p.m. each day, the town of St. Farr had a consistent soundtrack every night that the folks in town could set their watches to. The predictable order and timing of each tune gave comfort to the citizens of St. Farr, even though each of them would completely rewrite the playlist if they had the opportunity. Hearing the same songs played over and over wasn't out of the ordinary for a radio station. In fact, Top 40 was a very popular radio format. Hearing the same songs at the exact same time day after day, that was new and not so popular, and it was developed by Pat. Although the town was more concerned with the playlist, Pat was more concerned with the mystery of the donations. Specifically, she became concerned when the donations stopped arriving. It had been a few months since Pat received her last check, and the KOBO coffer was starting to run dry. She had continued pressing on, broadcasting live all day, and starting the playlist precisely at 5 p.m. for several weeks while being preoccupied with thoughts of what might have happened to her unknown patron. Had they passed away? Had they run out of money? Did they just get tired of listening to the same boy bands every night? She knew she wasn't going to get any answers. She didn't have the faintest idea who was on the other side of the steady stream of checks. Even if she did, they were giving out of the kindness of their heart. What was she going to do? Show up at their front door and demand they continue funding her hobby? St. Farr was built by people who found a way to survive when faced with unexpected circumstances. Pat decided she would do the same.